Welcome back to We Talk. As you know, I'm currently reviewing Jillian Epperly's book,
The evolution of the Jillian Jewish protocol.
So far, we've learned absolutely nothing. But before we jump in answer to a series of questions I received, no, I don't make any money via my blog, nor via my YouTube channel. I have not monetized either endeavor. If you are inclined to make a donation, you can do so via my PayPal account, which is dune9998@gmail.com. That'll be in the show notes. So a second question was posed: if you don't make any money, why are you doing this? Well, there's two reasons. First and foremost, I got sick of the Mike Huckabee ads concerning cinnamon as a cure or treatment for diabetes. I got sick of the cures for autism being pushed on friends and family, i.e., MMS. The kicker was being told that if I meditated for at least 20 minutes a day, I could have prevented my strokes. At the time, I had been meditating between 30 to 90 minutes per day since the age of 17. At the time, that was 33 years. I still meditate about 30 to 45 minutes a day. I used it primarily for pain management. My pain has subsided, so I don't have to do it as much. But the final straw came when my PCP suggested chiropractic manipulation to relieve muscle tension and fatigue in my neck due to hemiparesis. 3 weeks after my first stroke. But before I even had an MRI or an ultrasound performed on my neck. This was suggested prior to my first visit to my neurologist. Needless to say, I was pretty fucked off. In other words, the medical misinformation I was receiving was overwhelming, even from my own doctor. The second reason I do debunks, I find it fun. Plain and simple. It's just something I enjoy doing. Now we come to the fun part of Chapter 2. Jillian's lies concerning viruses. Quote,
Viruses are very misunderstood proteins, which act like parasites who determine the life or the death of their host.
End quote. No, Jillian, viruses are not proteins. The genetic material of a virus is enclosed in a protein shell called a capsid, but it's not a protein. Had Jillian read her own citation, she would know that the above statement was false. Quote,
A virus is a small parasite that cannot reproduce itself. Once it infects a susceptible cell, however, a virus can direct the cell machinery to produce more viruses. Most viruses have either RNA or DNA as their genetic material. The nucleic acid may be single or double-stranded. The entire infectious virus particle, called a viron, consists of nucleic acid and an outer shell of protein. The simplest viruses contain only enough RNA or DNA to encode 4 proteins. The most complex can encode 100 to 200 proteins.
end quote. No, a viron is the entire infectious particle. She goes on to say this, quote,
Instead, They consist of a single virus particle known as a viron, which is made of DNA and RNA genetic material. Fundamentally, a virus is an advanced form of data looking to upgrade a body or replicate so fast they overwhelm the body and they shut down vital organs. Viruses are key to evolution or de-evolution.
Jillian goes on then to quote,
A virus is made up of a core of genetic material, either DNA or RNA,
contrary to what she stated,
surrounded by a protective coat called a capsid, which is made up of protein. Sometimes the capsid is surrounded by an additional spiky coat called an envelope.
end quote. You can see she doesn't even follow what she reads. She's saying DNA and RNA. No, it's one or the other. The entire virus is considered the viron, etc., etc. But the kicker for me here is that we are not computers. We do not operate on data, and viruses do not upgrade us. What the fuck does administrative decentralization have to do with anything? There is no such thing as de-evolution in the biological sciences. A species either evolves or it doesn't. A species either survives or becomes extinct. Evolution does not have a conscious end goal in mind. It's driven solely by natural processes, i.e., survival of the fittest or reproductive success. Quote,
What determines the actions of the viruses to evolve or devolve the organism? It is energy from the elements, compounds, and genetic information influencing the internal and external environment of the host. This will determine how the organism is able to balance out its own biochemistry and adapt to fluctuating conditions of both its internal and external environment.
end quote. We'll come back to her energy bullshit in a moment. But I warn you, it's very, very close to the idiocy she pandered in her first book when she tried to compare the salt differential between inside and outside of a cell to a power plant generating electricity where there's a differential between salinity between the ocean and river water combining. Yeah, that's how stupid she is. Now, I want you to pay really close attention to what she does here. Now, this is kind of a visual, so you'll notice it more in the slide than you will with me reading it, but I'll try to be clear. Quote,
Viruses are microscopic parasites or communicable agents generally much smaller than bacteria. They lack the capacity to thrive and reproduce outside of a host body. Predominantly, viruses have a reputation for being the cause of contagion.
Now, she places her citation there and then adds
or evolution.
Her citation does not have the or evolution. Nowhere is it mentioned that viruses cause evolution. In fact, evolution isn't even mentioned in said citation. Basically, Jillian pulled this from her ass. One caveat I'm going to throw in here. Jillian's not wrong per se. It's just that her specific citation does not support her claim. The only mention of evolution in that citation is in regards to mimiviruses, mammaviruses, and megaviruses. It's not known how these large viruses have evolved. That's the only mention of evolution in that entire article. As I stated, Jillian is not incorrect. Viruses do impact evolution by driving adaptation, but they don't cause evolution. One example are human indigenous retroviruses, or HERVs. Another is transposons, which, quote,
copy or cut and paste themselves in different parts of our genetic material, and in doing so are able to cause real-time changes in our genetic makeup. Most of the time, these transposons go unnoticed, but over billions of years, they have played an integral role in evolution.
end quote. What I'm trying to say is really Jillian does not clarify what she is speaking to, and she further confuses the subject. Quote,
the evolution of man has to do with man's ability to adapt to his environment, and he does not do it alone. He is surrounded by viruses, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, parasites, and proteins, and they all have a role.
She then quotes,
viral evolution refers to the heritable genetic changes that a virus accumulates during its lifetime, which can arise from adaptation in response to environmental changes or the immune response of the host. Because of their short generation times and large population sizes, viruses can evolve rapidly.
end quote. So either Jillian can't read or can't comprehend what she reads, or, as I now believe, she is intentionally being deceitful. I'm pretty sure it's the latter. She is specifically speaking to human evolution. Her citation, on the other hand, clearly states viral evolution. Viral evolution refers yada yada yada. How can you miss that? Her source is, again, a topic collation of articles concerning viral evolution. It's plain as day. So either she really lacks reading ability or she's intentionally lying. She then goes on to state RNA viruses are more communicable. Quote,
since viruses are made up of core DNA or RNA, some viruses are more communicable over others.
This happens when, and then she quotes this,
some RNA viruses embed transcriptase enzymes that transfer RNA virus to DNA virus and combine into the host DNA. Then it follows the DNA replication process. Replication usually happens in the cytoplasm. DNA viruses are mostly double-stranded, while RNA viruses are single-stranded.
So I, of course, went and looked at her source. And what it actually states is this, quote,
RNA, or ribonucleic acid, is a nucleic polymer acid that performs a significant role in translating the genetic code from DNA to protein products. It is found in the nucleus and cytoplasm. It is usually a single-stranded molecule with shorter nucleotide chains. The sugar present is ribose. Several RNA viruses instill the RNA to the host cell and skip the DNA host for duplication and decoding. DNA here acts as a pattern for RNA virus, then transcribes into viral proteins. Some RNA viruses embedded transcriptase enzyme that transfers RNA virus to DNA virus and combine into the host DNA. Then it follows the DNA replication process. Replication usually happens in the cytoplasm. Mutation is the major cause of changes in the genetic code of the viruses. In RNA, mutation is higher because RNA polymerase is likely to commit errors. They are unstable and replace the protein coat that can bluff the immune system.
Nowhere does it say RNA viruses are more communicable. Nowhere. Jillian is confusing a DNA virus versus what an RNA virus is. Basically, this passage is speaking to how RNA viruses replicate in the cell as compared to the previous passage of DNA replication. It's not talking about being communicable. What's really annoying as this dribble continues. Quote,
when viruses start replicating due to favorable conditions of their host, it happens on an infinite basis, and everything in their environment gets exposed to the new viral information. When amino acids create proteins and virus proteins hold genetic material and synthesize with a host protein, the genetic material upload from the virus's control cells and their ability to replicate based on adaptation. This is like a free software upload you get on the World Wide Web. Some people can benefit greatly from the free upload. Others will find it difficult to take on that upload due to their own inability to adapt to new information or their device has limited memory.
end quote. I reread this passage a couple times because I couldn't make heads or tails out of it. Basically, it sounds to me like the old intelligent design canard that DNA is like a computer, or DNA is like computer code, or DNA is like data on a hard drive. 3 different versions. Here's the problem. Argument by analogy always fails. And this is basically what Jillian is doing. I mean, good God, she talks about updating from the web. As I said, we're not fucking computers, people. We don't upgrade, we don't devolve, we don't do any of that. To borrow basically from Smilodon's retreat, quote,
genetic information is in no way stored, retrieved, processed, or translated by the cell like a computer would treat digital information. There's no CPU, for example.
And jumping further ahead,
Cells and DNA don't work in discrete steps, further removing the digital aspect. At any one time in a cell, hundreds, if not thousands of alleles may be read, copied, repaired, or changed.
Smilodon then goes on to say,
make a change in a computer code and the whole thing likely crashes. Make a change in a DNA code and you might actually make it run better. The change probably won't have any effect at all, what with non-coding regions and the resilient nature of our protein construction system. DNA can repair its code sometimes. DNA can have code from completely different systems, viruses, inserted and will be perfectly fine unless the virus kills the organism. But the DNA will work until the rest of the cell runs out of
fuel, end quote. So, no, we're not computers. Not even close. As a fellow critic pointed out, this is a wee bit of foreshadow. So that's why she keeps pushing the virus upgrade, and viruses are evolution. She thinks destroying viruses will somehow stop humans from evolving. So you mustn't make antibodies because they fight the virus, which must be allowed to continue for evolution to continue. End quote. As I said, and I'm going to repeat this again, plain and simple, we are not computers. Viruses on the human body have the potential to kill, and if one were to be exposed to as many iterations of COVID-19 as Jillian claims, they would be dead or damn near dead. They sure as hell wouldn't be pumping out Facebook Live videos 4 to 8 times per day, 7 days a week. This next passage, I'm very flummoxed by it. I have no idea what to make of it.
All cells in biodiversity are made up of proteins and acids. Acids are made up of carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and sulfur, which are all on the periodic tables of elements. Additionally, these elements are made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons, and can thrive on combustible energy from the sun's proton to proton chain, or be completely inert in inhibiting energy.
Now, this is where we're going to hit her whole energy thing. For someone to claim the dictionary is full of facts, Jillian obviously doesn't know how to use it. Okay, combustible means capable of catching fire and burning. So looking at her source, I've come to the conclusion that Jillian is just making shit up. Basically, her source concerns the hydrogen burning that happens on the sun. Please tell me, what the fuck does the fusion of 4 hydrogen nuclei, protons, into a single helium nucleus, 2 protons plus 2 neutrons, have to do with chili juice? This is the hydrogen burning which takes place in all stars, including our sun. As I said, I stared at this passage trying to figure out exactly how this is even remotely relevant. Color me purple, but I think Jillian believes we are able to photosynthesize, the process by which green plants and certain other organisms transform light energy into chemical energy. The problem with that is that humans do not photosynthesize. Our body's demand for glucose is higher than what photosynthesis can accommodate. We can't do it, simply put. That, and we don't have the biological equipment necessary to photosynthesize. No amount of biohacking will change that fact. Humans and plants haven't shared a common ancestor for hundreds of millions of years. Nearly everything about our biology is fundamentally different. Doesn't mean they haven't tried. But anywho, to prevent further confusion, I'm going to stop here. Jillian then begins a discussion on fungi, mycoviruses, bacteriophages, and parasites. And no, we are not done with chapter 2. I bid you adieu, and I will see you when the next video drops. Take care. Peace out.